Happening now. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 332 on August 7th, 2024. My name is Jason Neiffer, and I am the Executive Director of the Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana State Virtual School located on the beautiful University of Montana campus in Missoula, Montana, in western Montana. But tonight, I'm joining you from one of the best places, not just in the United States, but on Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm in Butte, Montana tonight, fondly known as Butte, America, where I had a wonderful opportunity to speak at a school safety conference today. And tomorrow, I'm going to hang out with some Montana math teachers at their summer event, the Montana Council for Teacher of Mathematics MQ summer event, to talk about AI and digital learning and all things tech. And joining me tonight, as always, good evening, Dr. Wes Fryer. How are you tonight, sir?
Good evening, Jason. I am well. This is, I guess next week. Next week we go back on Wednesday, but some professional development. So just finishing up the school year, but not quite as busy as you are. But glad to have had a good school year and have taught some things online and done some workshops and doing some more book writing. So looking forward to the start of the school year, and we got our schedules. So I am a media literacy and STEM middle school teacher at Providence Day School in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we're anticipating the onslaught of a very weakened tropical storm as of 3 a.m. tonight. So that's going to be a little exciting. In fact, some schools were starting tomorrow, and then they postponed the start of their day because of the incoming storm. But anyway, I will not be teaching a engineering course this time. I'm just going to be teaching web design, coding, and computer apps, which is our media literacy class. So very, very excited about that. And and Microsoft Education shared out my Coding Mars unit this week on LinkedIn, and I think there are other channels too. So anyway, gonna be having a lot of fun. Hey, and it's Peggy. So yes, Peggy, we are thankfully not on the coast, so we're very far inland. So I don't know, there's 3 to 6 inches of rain, maybe. That'd be still a lot, but it's not like getting 20 inches like Charleston, so that's good. Are you all still having fires in Montana land?
We are. We have had a lot of rain in the last couple of weeks, so that's died down a bit. But I guess the thing that's weird about this summer, particularly in Missoula, is we did have a really serious storm 2 weeks ago. On Wednesday night after we last broadcast, there was a really serious storm in Missoula that knocked down maybe thousands of trees, and power was out in the city for some people for 4 days. Our power came back on in 36 hours, so that wasn't too terrible. I had friends that their power didn't come back on until Sunday night. And then we had a follow-up storm. It would have been Tuesday, so yesterday, where I've never seen lightning like that. It was a really serious dump of rain. So I don't know if that's the evolving climate or what that is attributed to, but yeah, the weather's been pretty edgy in Montana, particularly in western Montana, the last couple of years.
Man, just crazy. And I'm going to bet that Peggy is, of course, joining us from Phoenix, and it's warm down there. So my wife was in the Midwest in the Dallas area and in Oklahoma City for about 2.5 weeks. And anyway, there's been some triple digits, and all of hopefully things have cooled off a little bit. But yeah, it just seems like we're in for wild weather no matter where we are. So, well, what are we going to do tonight? We skipped last week. We changed some nights, and so yay, Peggy's here live. What are we up to here on the show, Jason?
Well, we are a once-a-week podcast that tries to take a look at the headlines across the techosphere and try to shoot them through an educational lens. And of course, that conversation has been dominated mostly by AI as of late. And speaking of, that's where most of our news will be tonight. In addition to some AI news, we'll also take a look at some Apple news, much of which is AI. And then looking at Google, half of that news is AI as well. So a lot going on in the AI space right now. I will tell you that, and I've had this conversation with numerous folks in kind of the education space that are a bit techie, If you're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of news that's happening, particularly in the artificial intelligence space, absolutely don't feel bad about that, because if anything, it has been a pretty extraordinary situation for sure, and it's happening so quickly. Last week is a good example of this. There was so much news last week that most of the podcasts most of the YouTube shows I watch, they're kind of like AI news driven, had to pick and choose, because otherwise their shows would have been 90 minutes long, and they aim for a pithy 30 minutes. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, yeah, that's about right.
Do you know that occurs to me, and I didn't put this as a geek of the week. I finally did make a page of the subscriptions that we pay for, which is actually going to be good. My wife didn't have a heart attack when she saw them, but yeah, there's too many. I think that kind of, sharing the podcasts that we listen to, but those kinds of YouTube channels, especially the ones that you're finding to be the most helpful with respect to AI, would definitely be a good list. Maybe on your AI centrist page, if you were looking for some content that you might put below the introduction, you could include a list of some of those. So Peggy said it was 116 yesterday in Phoenix. So come visit us in North Carolina, Peggy, and you can enjoy our, it's like 74 outside right now, I think.
Yeah, and I would also say I experienced 116 in Las Vegas in the middle of July, and I wouldn't call it pleasant.
No, it's not. All right. Well, we do have a ton of AI. Should we go through the subcategories tonight?
Yeah, so we've got some good AI, hopefully a story of hope, search disruption, AI and jobs, some open AI. Actually, there's lots of open AI news. That place is basically a soap opera at this point. A little bit about AI messaging, evaluating AI, a category that I'm calling AI is weird, which, to be honest, could be really all of the tools we tend to talk about in the space. Research about AI. Copyright news in regards to this, and something I'm calling more AI cruft, which will become obvious if we get to that article tonight. So, Wes, shall we start with maybe the more specific Google and Apple news, and then we can ease our way into this week's AI stuff?
Sure. Here's a fast Apple one. We're going to probably, I don't know, who knows? Not all the AI. There is some AI positive stuff, but this is cool. And we're both Apple fanboys here. So this was from CBC News, which is a Canadian news organization, on July 29th. BC Search and Rescue Group saves hiker stranded by wildfire on glacier. And if you read the article further, it was the SOS feature on the newest iPhones, which allow you to directly communicate to the satellite, that allowed these folks to be rescued from wildfire. So yay, Apple, good job bringing a transformative technology that saves lives. I wonder if we're going to see something like that in an upcoming Apple event, kind of like we have for Apple Watch and those sorts of things. Do you have a phone that can do that, SOS?
I do, and I am very excited about that, in part because I do spend some time. My in-laws have a cabin on the Missouri River near Great Falls that is in a deep ravine, and actually I should say it's more appropriate to say deep coulee, and there is no cell service down there. In fact, you have to go a mile uphill to get to a cell service, and they don't mind it. They like being off the grid, so it's not a huge deal. But both my in-laws recently updated from, I think they had iPhone SE version 1s. They upgraded to the 15 in part because that feature is available, and it's going to be really great to have the texting and then the ability to do the emergency piece out of there. I think that gives a lot of peace of mind of people that are in the backcountry.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think we have any articles about it in the show this week, but I definitely have read that direct connection to satellite for just even voice calls is coming. And, we've got Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin, in addition to Elon and SpaceX with their thousands of satellites. And we were down at the Kennedy Space Center at the end of June, and it's kind of incredible what commercial space is doing and how that whole area around Cape Canaveral has been transformed. And so one of the positives of that is going to be more space-based communication, and I would guess Android is probably going to work on that as well. But that's kind of wild. I remember when one of my friends later in his Air Force career was deployed to it was the Seychelles, which is in Africa, but they were basically targeting pirates and with drones, and had the satchel, kind of like the bag phones used to be when cell phones first came out, but maybe not. It was a sat phone. It's a bigger phone and a special phone with a very expensive subscription. But I mean, being able to talk to it, at any time, anywhere on the planet, crazy. All right.
Well, yeah, and I will also note, I mean, when I was on the National Kidney Transplant list in 2014 and 2015, before I ended up having a live donor offering me their kidney, that was something I was considering doing, in part because I was off the grid sometimes, and in that particular scenario, it's not like you can wait a couple of days. Like if you're the candidate, you need to get on the next airplane to Seattle, and that was something that I seriously considered. And I do think that for a lot of people, especially in very rural areas in the United States, I think having the ability to transmit to satellite via just the common cell phone is really an extraordinary step forward in regards to connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you want to do a couple more Apple articles there? I think you put a few of those other ones in there.
Sure. Yeah. The other Apple articles that I think are interesting. First, these are two. Actually, it's three AI related articles. The first one is that Apple or we're starting to get some ideas of where Apple's going with their Apple Intelligence play. And one of the articles I'll start with is an unfortunate a piece of news, but this is from Bloomberg, and I said I didn't put Bloomberg in there, but Bloomberg on August 28th, and unfortunately, the Apple AI features will not come in the first releases of the next versions of all the operating systems coming to Apple devices. And there had been a lot of hope that the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro, the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max would both have Apple Intelligence on them, and now we're hearing that it may be 15. I'm sorry, is it 19 or 18? It's 19, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, whatever the next version is, the 0.1 or 0.2 release will be the likely target for that. And that's disappointing, but I think that also tells you that I think Apple was really interested in getting this technology out and at least announced, because of this perception that they were behind everyone else. And so that's not a surprising piece of news, but disappointing for sure for Apple fanboys. But there's another Verge article that I think is super interesting, where they're starting to dig into some of the code that is surrounding Apple Intelligence and some of the instructions it's giving to some of the large language models. And I thought this was a pretty interesting read. For example, the Mail Assistant will be baked into the Mail app for Apple. This might be the thing that finally gives me an excuse to stop avoiding the Mail app. I've never liked it. It's just not as good as the native apps. And I'm talking about, both Gmail and Outlook are much better apps in my humble opinion. But the cool things that Apple Mail could probably do under this, but you are a helpful Mail assistant, which can identify relevant questions from a given mail and a short reply snippet given a mail, and the relay snippet ask relevant questions which are explicitly asked in the mail. The answer to these questions will be selected by the recipient, which will help reduce hallucinations in drafting the response. And the reason why this is interesting to me is because it is kind of a lesson in how to write prompts for large language models. I know that our team working on AI at Montana Digital Academy, and I actually heard this a couple weeks ago. We had Tori Trust from the University of Massachusetts Amherst as one of our speakers at Innovation Runs Through It in mid-July at the University of Montana, and she was talking about Ethan Mullock and how some of his prompts are up to 2 or 3 pages now of specific instructions. And that's true of some of our prompts as well. We have a text writing prompt that is close to 2 pages now, that we've added to and tweaked over time. And those words really matter. And one of the ways I've described this when talking to people about prompting is that prompting as an art is super interesting because it's kind of a teaching phenomenon. If you don't get what you're looking for, then you can both immediately multi-prompt and ask the tool to evolve the answer, or the preference for me is usually to revise the prompt and see if I can get better outputs without having to do multi-prompting. So I found this article really interesting to read. And if you're having some prompting issues, or if you'd like to learn more about the kinds of things you can ask of the large language models to get better output, I think this is a pretty good instruction article, even though I don't think it was the intent of the news.
I just dropped an article in. I don't know if you followed this with Apple sell-off of Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett. He dumped. They dumped about half of their stake in Apple, which fueled a plunge in Apple shares of about 11%, and the Nasdaq 100 overall was down 5%. And I think this was a pretty significant stock hit, and it wasn't just for Apple. You have any insights? I know you're a Dogecoin owner, or you were. So you've got a lot more street cred than I do when it comes to investments. So what insights can you offer us on why? What is Warren Buffett? Why has he lost faith in Apple, apparently, or at least
I've also read some articles on this, and I'm not sure if I could speak to that specifically. But what I would say, though, is that in Warren Buffett I trust. I do follow what he does on a pretty regular basis. I will not be selling my Apple stock. In part because it is a long time investment for me, and my investment strategy is pretty simple. I invest in stuff that I use. That's an old Motley Fool strategy from when I first started investing for retirement 20 years ago. They had this really interesting concept called the International Bank of Coca-Cola. And the idea is that, you are a good market researcher because you are engaged in the market. So buy the stuff that you like. And that's generally worked pretty well for me. But the market's extremely volatile right now. And the advice and to be clear, I'm not giving financial advice because I'm not qualified to do so. But one of the things that Warren Buffett talks about is putting something into a stock market index-based stock. So in other words, it goes invest up and down with the Nasdaq or with the stock market. So you just follow the market where it goes is probably the best advice there. So, but for more information, contact Warren Buffett.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and when we segue to some AI articles, there is one that is kind of related to that as far as stocks. So, did you know? Well, okay, let's do the Google monopoly thing, and then I don't know if you noticed this, but when I log back, I haven't been logging into my school account much this summer, and uBlock Origin is it because of the VMAST or anyway? There's the new standard. Okay, let me do this one first. This is The Verge on August 8th. Now that Google is a monopolist, what's next? And the subtitle is Reaching a Decision on What to Do About Google Search Could Take a Very Long Time. This is a European court. That we've had both, I guess. The federal court, federal judge has ruled that Google has an illegal monopoly. And this is Monday. The judge, Meta, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? MEHTA, no affiliation with the company formerly known as Facebook, noted that Google is liable for violating antitrust. And, this lawsuit's been going on since 2020. So this is almost 4 years ago. They'll start to look at deciding remedies. But as you read through these articles, they're like, it's going to take years because this is going to be appealed. And evidently, well, the article says a breakup is unlikely. There were a lot of really interesting things in here and some things that Google really liked. Like, I think I read some headlines or something that like you couldn't pay Apple enough to not use Google or something, or I don't know. They do pay, but like people don't want to go use Bing. And anyway, I have not read the entire case, and I've only scanned some headlines. But the bottom line is, Google's kind of a monopoly that a lot of consumers like, and really, and I guess the point that some of that testimony made was, that Google is what it is because it's the best. And I agree with that. I mean, I'm an Apple fanboy, and I have been a real Google advocate. Now, I think there's been some changes in Google, and I think, anyway, I could digress on that. But anyway, any thoughts you have on this hearing, other than the fact, I guess, that we're going to have to wait for anything really to happen that'll be substantive?
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny, Wes, because I had almost the exact same thoughts when I was hearing this news initially, is that I don't go to Google because of their clever marketing tricks. I go to Google because it gives me the best results of what I'm looking for. But that's also, it's easy to start chasing your own intellectual tail when you start talking about this, because you could argue that one of the reasons why they are the really only legitimate search engine that most people would defer to is because they don't allow any competition. They don't shut them down. In fact, if anything, they provide a lot of money to the Mozilla Foundation every year, which runs a direct competitive project to theirs, because they believe there should be multiple people in the marketplace. But I think you're very right that I don't think Apple would, unless they started their own search engine, which I don't think they're ever going to do. It wouldn't make any sense to default to DuckDuckGo or Bing or one of the other search alternatives. It might be more interesting if they allow people to choose at the beginning of the process, right? Like when you first go to Safari or one of the other browsers, that it may choose or ask you to choose a default search engine, and then that's ultimately the consumer choice. But I still think most consumers would choose Google. Even on I think Chrome gives you 4 or 5 different options if you dig around the settings, and I haven't even heard of half of them. I would love to use DuckDuckGo more personally, because I do not like the tracking. But the bottom line is that I don't use DuckDuckGo not because I love tracking. I don't use DuckDuckGo because it doesn't give me this good of results.
Yeah, and Bing doesn't either. Peggy's asking how Google could control competition. I don't think they're arguing they have to control competition. I think it's been their behavior as a monopolist. And one example of that, I think, is these really large fees that Firefox and Apple as well, that they've been able to get from Google, right? In order to make that the default search engine, Google has paid millions and millions of dollars. And so while Jason and I, and probably millions of other people, will choose, Google as our search engine of choice, even if we were given choices. That's what I'm going to choose. People have not had in the United States a choice on the iPhone or with the Firefox browser, because millions of dollars have been paid by Google. And so that kind of monopolistic behavior, along with other things. Now, this also has to do with ads and what they've done and what they continue to do. And, they have a real dominant space in the market. Of course, Facebook does too. It's interesting how I don't think Twitter is profitable yet. There's not an article in our notes, but talk, about Reddit trying to go stronger on advertisements and trying to draw in the revenue. But, Google is highly profitable because of advertisement revenue. So is Facebook. But there's a lot of other folks that struggle. And, Google's dominance means that you really have to play by Google's rules, and they set the terms, and they've been postponing. We've talked about these, I don't remember what these standards are, but we've talked about them talking about changing this and postponing this. But the bottom line is it makes them a lot of money. What'll be interesting is if it does take a few years for this litigation to be appealed and finally resolved, Perplexity and some of these other AI search tools could very well, if not displace Google, certainly put it in a different position than it is today with respect to competition. But that all remains to be seen because, Gemini is there with its integrated results, and we're all trained, or I say we all, lots and lots of people around the world just rely on Google, and Googling it is synonymous with searching it. And so those kind of things are big habit patterns that won't change quickly, more than likely. But who knows? I mean, what if something is transformatively better? It's possible that lots of folks may change overnight, but we'll see. All right. Anything else you'd like to do before we do?
Just one more on the Apple piece. This is from Bloomberg on July 26th. Apple has announced, and there's an archive link there, Wes, that they are going to adopt the voluntary AI safeguards established by President Biden earlier this year. And this is not that unusual because Alphabet and Amazon and Microsoft and Meta and OpenAI have all agreed to do something similar to this. But I do think it's important that we are starting to get some semblance of what regulation might look like in this space. I would still note that from everything I read and hear, it's still all money all the time, pouring on the situation like gasoline almost, as we try to figure out what's next in these spaces. But it is good to see that Apple is committed to this. And I would say, I do think that Apple's a very privacy focused company. And I think that it's likely that Apple will figure out a way to integrate these technologies into their platforms with a much more minimal risk of our data being, tossed around for whatever reason.
We watched it was Jennifer Lopez Atlas something AI show last night, which was actually not, it was good. It wasn't not too bad, but it was AI off the rails seeking to destroy humanity. My experience, and I'm not a hardcore red teamer, but from what I've read and from the limited experiences that I've had, and they're not super limited, it just really seems to me like we're going to have controls that folks are going to put into place. And I think those will make a difference on these large frontier models that have wide utilization. But given the open source side of AI, as well as the ability for folks to red team and jailbreak these models, I am not optimistic, but I'm glad people are having the conversation. I'm not sure, how effective it's going to be. And I predict that you and I are going to be talking about this in the school year, because I think this is going to be an exceptionally challenging school year for teachers and administrators. I think that the artificial intelligence tools, I watched, maybe I mentioned it a couple shows ago. He was on the board, maybe still is of OpenAI when they, fired Sam Altman for a little while. And this was a video they had made a while back, but he was, and other people say this too, but imagine ChatGPT today working 100,000 times faster and better. Can we even imagine that? And that is the trajectory. Now, of course, these are also folks that are hyping this, and there's people that'll say, just like they said, Moore's law won't continue. Time will tell, but it does appear that the more compute and the more nodes that we throw at this, the better it becomes. And we still don't understand exactly how it all works. And it's pretty mind blowing. So I'm glad they're talking about this, but I predict these are going to pose a lot of challenges for us in schools and in society as well. So it's not going to be something that will be resolved, I don't think, in the foreseeable future.
Yep, me too.
All right. Can I do a good AI first to start us off?
Please. Yeah, let's do some great AI.
All right. Well, this was a great one. This was from NPR on July 25th. And the headline here is a neurological disease stole Representative Jennifer Wexton's voice. AI helped get it back. And for a number of years, I have been sharing a great series on YouTube narrated by Robert Downey Jr., published in 2019, called The Age of AI. And in one of those episodes, they tell the story of a NFL linebacker with ALS and the struggle that he had, and then trying to use AI, to be able to communicate. And so in this case, Representative Wexton doesn't have ALS, but she was able to use her own voice on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives to be able to deliver a speech. And so, as we have so many things talking about, deep fakes and bad actors tricking the elderly to think that their kids are calling them in an emergency to send money, and there's all these different things that are being utilized in negative and bad ways. I thought this was really, really great. So her diagnosis is called progressive supranuclear palsy, and she describes it as a Parkinson's disease on steroids. And this is going to eventually be debilitating to the point where it will completely, I guess, take away her ability to talk. But yay AI, yay merging, biological challenges with these kinds of tools. And the company that has developed that is 11 Labs, and we've heard of them before because I think they were one of the ones that basically developed a tool that just with a few seconds of someone's voice, you could have a reasonable facsimile. And so, like we've talked about, all tools that are powerful can be used in powerfully good and powerfully bad ways. But this is a good use of it. And I think this is important to amplify because sometimes we're just hearing the dystopian negative, disinformation. It's all over. It's just getting worse. But at least we do have some good news to share too.
I would also note too, related to that, is that 11 Labs is also a really wonderful text-to-speech plugin that developers can use. And so I'm expecting a significantly more inexpensive and effective products for text-to-speech as it relates to a browser. And I'm really excited about that because there are a lot of commercial tools available for something like a distance learning program like my own, but they're just not as robust as I would want them to be. And there is some longstanding research to say that artificial voices tend to be less engaging and informative than human voices when kids are engaged in an online learning setting. So if we can utilize some of this AI technology to help evolve that process, I think that would be a truly incredible use of that tech.
Here's the link. I'll put this in the show notes too, for the extension by 11 Labs, which appears to be free, and it's just called Human Reader. Is that the one you're talking about?
Well, that's the technology that they're kind of out in beta, but some formal products that we'll plug into, a formal LMS, for example, we're told is coming soon.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to teach a lesson for my middle schoolers in our media literacy class on voice typing, which is really, really good within Google Docs and other Google products. And I think what we're going to be able to get closer to is like Neuralink, basically. We don't have a direct brain interface, and there's people that are really scared of that and say, no, never. But, when my finger's on this thing called a keyboard, that's the input method. There's a finite limit, right? When I can simply speak and talk, and the technology is really, really good at accurately interpreting my accent and my language, then suddenly the interface, the speed at which ideas can go from my brain into this piece of technology is accelerated. And so I think that it's awesome to be able to use that technology, thinking about the ways that we consume content. I bet, Jason, for your distance learning program, you all probably have some recommendations. I'm sure you do, as far as, of course, browsers and extensions and things like that. But that would be, at some point, I'd love to know what sort of the latest and greatest that you all are recommending. I can't grab my phone right now because it's my camera, but there's a Natural Reader, I think, app that I use to be able to throw a link in there or a PDF and have it read to me. And I'm listening to more books now on Audible than I'm reading on my Kindle. So those technologies continue to advance, and that sort of thing really allows for differentiation. It allows for greater access to ideas and content. And I think those things can be very transformative. And it doesn't mean we don't read, and it doesn't mean we don't, still, study reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it does mean that we have other ways, not only as students, but also as adults, to consume information and ideas and also be able to share them. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's very true, and I do think that one of the underappreciated sets of tools that are certainly going to be empowered and in a lot of cases super powered by AI are accessibility tools, and just the ability to make up where we currently lack in all digital learning. To be frank, in regards to this, I think AI is going to make up the really extraordinary difference.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what would you like to go to next, Alex? You only have 50 different different possibilities. I think we need to definitely do AI is weird before we're done. But
yeah, let's talk OpenAI for a little while. Just because it's so funny because in my mind they're clearly maybe not the market leader, but a market leader, the clear a market leader, right? That they're certainly in that upper echelon of tools. But from an organizational standpoint, it seems like it's utter chaos over there. And just a couple of articles from the last couple of weeks. First and foremost, a lot of people have left or taken leave time off from OpenAI. This is TechCrunch on August 5th, 2024, talk about how the co-founder, who is John Schulman, has left to go to Anthropic, which Anthropic is the maker of Claude, and they have been the recipient of several former OpenAI employees. And for listeners to the podcast, you may remember that we've talked about Claude several times, but one of their things is constitutional AI. They feel like that AI should have a set of rules that are always implicit in the model that protect things like human rights and increase the human dignity and all those pieces. And it's very interesting that he's left for there, but also the co-founder of OpenAI, his name's Greg Brockman, is taking an extended leave through the end of the year to recharge and relax, is what the company confirmed. And this joins Peter Deng, who has left for greener pastures as well. And it's certainly something to be kind of thoughtful about. And there is a lot of analysis. I also put in a link to Matt Wolf on YouTube, who's one of the better kind of reporters of AI. He posted a video yesterday that I listened to most of that talked about, is AI falling apart and imploding? That's worth a listen to. But the bottom line is that, the very much center tool that we keep hearing about as being super important has a lot of chaos going on. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. Related to that, OpenAI has talked about that they will be offering a dev day this fall. And one of the things that is true about that is they've very clearly said that ChatGPT 5 will not be released this fall. So that's unfortunate for sure. They will instead focus on the API and developer services instead, and they'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges they're facing too, and what they're doing about that, including how to find increased high quality training data. And we've talked about this a couple of times in the podcast, but the more data you give AI, the more likely its responses are solid. But the companies that are working on these AI models, in a lot of cases, either don't have the rights to other tech. Sometimes they've just abandoned that rule and go after it anyways, or they have put their fortunes into what is referred to as artificial training data, which is data that is created by AI. And some people think that artificial training data can help make your model better. Others are very doubtful about that. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Before I jump into the other pieces, any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Wes?
just the alignment and the ethics of what we were talking about before is what Schulman identified in his X post or Twitter post about his reason. And yeah, like you said, Anthropic is trying to do constitutional AI, and that'll be an interesting challenge. Well, to just have students think about, think about limits and guardrails, and I don't know what form a lesson would take on that, but it would. Yeah, by the if you find any simulations, Jason, I was on a webinar today about media literacy, and several people were suggesting some different media literacy, like disinformation identification games and things like that. But if you come across any sort of simulations or games that would be student appropriate, that relate to AI and some of these issues, man, or maybe those are things I should have my kids develop.
Yeah.
We could use ChatGPT to come up with the prompts, but like the scenarios and the kinds of issues, and some of this is very objectionable content and things that we don't want to talk to middle schoolers about, or maybe even high schoolers about. But gosh, it's just such a wild world. And the chatbot world, oh my gosh, I mean, it all is chatbots, right? But being able to we talked about that before, the Chinese boyfriends and girlfriends, and this whole, it's such a wild world. So
Yeah, it really, really is. Okay,
all
there's
right.
two other quick articles I want to cover up on their OpenAI as well. The first one is that OpenAI, according to PC Magazine on July 30th, has started rolling out its advanced voice mode, despite the controversy involving Scarlett Johansson from earlier this year. And we talked about this a couple of times on the podcast, but they did do a pretty extraordinary set of demos in the spring where there was a very human sounding voice mode that was available in the mobile devices for chat. And the reason why I want to talk about this one, sadly, it's not available to me yet, so I don't have access to that. They say that everyone who's a pro user will have access to it by fall. But I think that the chat feature is one of the most underappreciated parts of the open AI model. And so I want to give just a quick demo and I'm pretty sure I picked this up on TikTok at some point. I don't know who to cite the source for this, but what I have here is my iPhone.
You're citing TikTok. That's good.
Yes, I'm citing TikTok. Yeah, obviously, I got that from Google. But I'm just going to open up the ChatGPT app, and if you have your phone plugged into Bluetooth in your car, you can actually have a conversation back and forth with ChatGPT via your phone, which actually I do a fair bit. I have a 10-minute commute in the mornings from my house to work, and sometimes if I need to organize my thoughts, it will I'll be able to talk to it and receive advice or have a kind of a good thought buddy. But I want to give you an example of what this looks like. So I'm going to press the voice button. And it will take a moment. And now it's listening. So, hey, Alex, which is what it's asked me to call it, I'd like you to help me out with something. I'm going to give you some random bits of information. And after every time I'm done, I want you to say, okay, but don't process the information until you've received all my bits.
Okay.
Okay, so first.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Did not understand what you said.
Okay, we'll try this one more time. Hey, Alex, I'm going to talk at you for a couple minutes. Every time I pause, I want you to say okay, but don't do anything with the information until I say process it.
Okay.
Okay, so today I need to start working on my new class, and I need to look up past syllabi from other professors on campus.
Okay.
I would like to then create or do a web search for syllabi from other prominent universities in the space.
Okay.
I want to also look at the new syllabus requirements by the college.
Okay.
And I also would like to spend some time today reading the last 2 editions of the textbook that the last professor used to see if I can use the older one so it's cheaper for students.
Okay?
Okay, now process all that information into a list for work today.
Sure, here's your list for today. 1, start working on your new class. 2, look up past syllabi from other professors on your...
Okay, so the magic that's happened here is that it's now listed as a list on my app, but more importantly, if I log into ChatGPT at work on my desktop, it's just going to be sitting there, right? And I last did this demo live last week for a group of teachers, and instead of just talking about some to-do items for my own teaching at the university this fall, I actually pitched to the phone a class trip and put all these things I wanted to do on the class trip. And after every idea, it said, okay, okay, okay. And not only did it make a list of everything for me, it said, great, thanks for making that list. Now I want you to turn that into a formal proposal for my principal. And it then created a narrative proposal for doing exactly this for my principal. And so it's just a really interesting thought partner. And I keep thinking about, students in particular. And for example, I've had some really amazing students that have some identified disability. They're on the spectrum, or they struggle with kind of organizing their thoughts. Having a thought buddy like this, I think, would be just a really extraordinary service to be able to provide students to help them organize their thinking and learning. And that's a good example of using AI in a way that I don't think really replaces anything. You're still getting to the bottom of the learning, which has to be the number one priority. But it provides students that struggle in some way, shape, or form to have some assistance so that they can focus their efforts on the learning component. So I love that demo. I've seen it a couple of times on social media, and it's become part of my almost daily practice with these tools.
I love that, because in the last couple of weeks, I get really mad. But it's because of my own prompt limitations at how I would pause too long and then it would start processing and I would get upset, and I would tell it to give me longer and that would work. But that's awesome to have a keyword and just, have it say okay and be able to process it. This is an absolute complete game changer. I am having extended conversations with ChatGPT, and there's like 3 voices that you can select. 2 sound male, 1 sounds more female. And anyway, that's nice that there are some voice choices. Again, these are the worst voices that we're probably ever going to have to use. But like, it is an absolute positive game changer. And it gets back to that Neuralink thing, that when I am just able to talk and even if I'm making mistakes, just get it out and express, everything. I was able to actually get it to combine a bunch of lists that I had, and I was gonna try to have it manage the list. There's like 220 things, and I think I'm going to be importing them into Todoist, because I was like, maybe I can just use this to, manage my list. But I mean, this is Star Trek. This is talking to the computer, because anytime, especially, we can work with data and we can get it to do things with data. Those are pretty phenomenal. And I don't know if you've done these demos, but Jason, I'm already like grabbing an email list and saying, format this comma separated, give me this as a CSV, give me this in tabular format. And I want names in the first column, emails in the second. And just, that is incredible. And so what it also makes me do is really, really not like dealing with Siri or dealing with the Google Assistant, because they are so far behind. It is just horrible. So if we would see OpenAI come out with a smart speaker, I don't know if Google or Apple really is going to want to let them have a plugin. It'll be really, wouldn't it be cool if we could jailbreak our Google speakers so that we could basically talk to OpenAI, but then still have the same kind of control that we have over Internet of Things devices and stuff. I mean, but this is, again, the worst it's going to be. I think it's just going to get better than this. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that hack, because that's a great one as far as being able to have a long conversation and not, in my case, get frustrated that it's processing it before I'm done, talking. But then also just this encouragement to play with that voice feature, because have you seen any other tools besides ChatGPT that let you do that? Just talk to it.
I don't. I've never seen a conversation mode, right? So I can type that. I could type that out, I suppose, if I wanted to, but the conversation mode is what's pretty critical there, and that's the current version of it, right? Supposedly, this advanced voice mode should be much more conversational in nature, and I don't need it to be that much more conversational than it is now. So I'm assuming these next sets of tools will be nothing short of extraordinary.
I'm putting this into chat, but Peggy's asking about, is this the prompt optimizer? And no, Jason's just talking about the regular iOS ChatGPT app. So just download the app for free, sign in, and then there's a little headphones or microphone or something you tap in, and instead of typing, you're just talking, and it's talking back to you. But everything is written down. So as soon as you stop the conversation, it's there. If you're doing that on your phone, you open up your web browser on your laptop or desktop at work, it's all there, and it's just incredible. So,
yep. Welcome to the future.
Yeah, that's right. All right, we got like 10 minutes. I just asked, by the way, ChatGPT to say tell me about Wesley Fryer, and this is weird. Every single thing that it said was accurate, but it actually pulled things out of conversations that I had with it that are not on the internet.
Yeah, and in fact, it's been doing that with me too. It refers to me by name now when I talk to it, and it also, that's the memory feature. And what's interesting about that is that I haven't looked lately, but the last time I looked carefully, the memory feature had stored a lot of interesting bits about me, and it was generally pretty accurate. I don't know how I feel about that, in part because not that I'm worried about that. I do think that especially for paying customers, they are pretty likely to not store your data in that way. But who knows? But let me give you some examples of just stuff in the last couple of days. I'm the executive director of the Montana Digital Academy. I'm interested in project-based learning in high schools. My organization uses Gmail. Jason is interested in retrieval, augmentation, generation, or RAG in the context of AI. Jason's teaching a graduate level course on action research in education and a class on action research for early childhood education students. This is all true. Jason and his team are designing a high school world geography course. Jason is exploring the idea of creating co-working. Well, that's just a plan that I was talking to it about. Jason is interested in virtual school policies, technologies, and best practices for K-12. Jason is an expert instructional designer for asynchronous online courses. I don't know about that, but still, my name is Jason. Jason likes vintage poster design. It's all pretty accurate stuff.
This is all accurate, and it's pulling. I asked it to then create an MLA formatted bibliography for the sources, and it's not good in terms of the citations and stuff. Like, it tries to cite Ning for the statewide oral history project, and but it's pulling some stuff that's right off of Mastodon too. It's wild, man. You want to talk about? Let's talk about the surveillance economy or the surveillance society, right? Not only do we walk outside and we can be on camera, but now as we share on social media, these tools are by default tracking us, and then if somebody wants to focus in on us, or my gosh. Yeah, Peggy, that's a good question. She's saying, could I get that same information about you if I asked for it? I don't think so. I mean, there are a couple things in here that I have had some conversations with it, with the ChatGPT, but I have not put one of these things online at all. Like I've only talked to ChatGPT about it. So anyway, that's interesting. This is wild too. Under digital presence, it gives professional background, digital presence, community and projects, personal interests, educational interests, other activities. Under the section, where is this, about digital presence, he runs a WordPress site called speedofcreativity.org, where he's been blogging since 2005. The site contains over 5,000 posts, and he hosts most of the media shared on the site off-site as flickr.com embeds. That is true. I don't think I've written that down anywhere. How did it figure that out? Did it analyze a lot of posts on my site and then figure out that I'm not putting the content there? I mean, wow. You remember how bad this was just like a year ago? I mean, it was saying you had a graduate degree from some other institution and, oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm just amused that it seems like it's starting to happen multiple times a week where Wes and I are both just jaw-dropping as we explore what these tools are starting to do.
Well, and what this shows is what we've said before, and that is that we have got to keep playing with these tools and telling stories about them. So I appreciate, as always, the chance to pick your brain. And by the way, you're giving a whole bunch of presentations about AI to teachers and administrators in the next few weeks. So we'll what is the AI gospel from Dr. Neiffer going to be comprised of? Probably the demo you just shared.
Yeah, I like that demo because it's pretty jaw-dropping. The other demo that I do a lot of, and I think it's a pretty extraordinary one, is of Notebook LM. I think that is by far the most underappreciated, really radically awesome tool set for teachers, because the way I've changed the way I've talked about this tool is that it allows you to build a knowledge oracle. That's the way I'm terming it now, because and I did this as a demo a couple weeks ago at an administrator conference, but you don't even have to have any questionable copyright stuff to be able to do it. There's enough open source textbooks on the internet on any number of subjects. Plus, Notebook LM also allows you to pull in web pages now. So the demo I used was going out and picking up 4 or 5 world history open source textbooks that don't have copyright issues. And then I found all sorts of university pages on World War I and the weapons of World War I and diplomacy in World War I. And World War I is kind of my AI topic that I use because I can see if the results are quality, in part because I've been doing that particular topic since day one. But more importantly, it's something that there's just so much information about on the internet. Like, you would have to show me something interesting to be better than the internet, right? But I managed to create a group of 40 sources in Notebook LM, including adding a bunch of county Montana County Historical Society pages on doughboys of Montana in World War I, and was able to then ask it questions. And probably the best one that I came up with is pick the 10 most important battles of World War I that explain the narrative of the warfare. So in other words, there are hundreds of battles in World War I, and I could probably speak authoritatively about 15 of them from teaching that content. But just giving kids a list of battles is neither that effective nor all that interesting. But if you can pick the ones that tell a story, right? That's going to be more likely to leave an impact on students. And it did an extraordinary job of picking out the 10 battles that tell the story really well of how the war played out, and explain to me why. And the way Notebook LM does it now is that you can click on the source citation. It won't just take you to which document it got it from. It'll take it from the specific part of the document and highlight it for you. So it's all cited. And, if you are teaching a new content, or if you're teaching content that, that you would like to have a thought partner about, and I don't care which subject you're teaching, it's really quite amazing. So those are the two things. In addition to I just think you need to spend 30 minutes a week playing with these tools just to get a sense of how powerful they are. Not that I think our students are vastly going underground to cheat with them. I still think students, if anything, are more leery about these tools than we are. But it is super important, I think, to know how the weeks and months play out with their evolution.
It strikes me that we just have to move beyond sort of the endpoint of the traditional assessment, because so many of those were the essay, the multiple choice test, the presentation. And I really think that moving into, the simulation, the interactive story, like the ways in which, like you said, we can have, partners in thinking, but we can also have co-editors and co-designers and co-writers. I think it has to raise the bar of what we understand students can create, what we can create, but then also what we expect them to create. So it is, it's mind blowing, but it's also so freaking exciting, because as somebody who has been working with this stuff for a long time and doing some really primitive, sort of like hunting and pecking around with programs, like being able to, ask it to, create JavaScript programs that do things. I mean, that text prepper, I use that thing every day. Yeah. And that's a program that there's no way. I mean, the app that I originally used was taken offline. Yes, I suppose I could pay for one, but you can actually, though, you can even just ask ChatGPT to do it. You could say, hey, I need to post to Blue Sky or Spoutable that has a 300 character post limit. I want you to chunk this in post, and I want you to use the syntax 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and then boom, it does it. But anyway, that's not quite as fast as having a web page where I'm like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay. I think we need to, we've skipped a little time. So here we are. This has been good. We didn't get through our articles, but you know what? That is the way it goes. So shall we geek of the week?
That's the way it happens, right? Well, Wes, why don't you share with us your geeks of the week?
Okay, well, I'm gonna do the triple. So, taught a 2-week class on teaching the conspiracies, part 2, just wrapped up on Monday for the media education lab. And one of the things in the midst of all the conversations we had, I was inspired to do is create a lesson about influencers, because influencers are so big today, and understanding who students as well as adults are turning to for their influencers, deciding what they trust those people to tell them, all that. It's a pretty big deal. So that's the draft of that lesson, which of course I co-created with AI. Adobe has a new tool out called Adobe Podcast. I'm going to be playing with that. I've been doing quite a bit of oral history work this summer with a local historical association. And speaking of AI, one of the tools for podcasting I learned about was Descript. And I have a whole chapter in this book that I'm a chapter and a half away from being done with. I'm going to get that done before school starts in 2 weeks. And I asked it at the end of this chapter. I actually recorded myself almost an hour, just giving a presentation basically about all the aspects I wanted to talk about. Then I had ChatGPT, and I used Claude some too, help me generate these different sections of the chapter. But then at the end, I said, so what have I left out, and should I be including in here for people who are interested in audio interviews and podcasting? He said, well, these are some tools that you probably should be using. And this one, Descript.com, is incredible. Upload video, upload audio. You can, produce either one. The transcript quality is so high. You tell it how many speakers you have, it'll auto detect. I did a Zoom call with my dad and one of his best buddies from college, like last week. We talked for an hour. They told stories about being at the Air Force Academy and this gentleman introduced my parents. There's all these stories. And I'm telling you, it is incredible the speed and accuracy with which this tool worked. But then also you have this clickable transcript. And in terms of oral history and how important it is to be able to search, to your point about World War I, hey, I want to know about this specific battle. You know, you don't just want audio out there that people have to listen to in its entirety. You want searchable text that's accurate. So, yes, Peggy. Yeah, Peggy said, will you post the session? Yeah, this actually, Peggy, this YouTube will be archived immediately. We'll stop the show and the link is there. So just Google EdTech SR YouTube and you'll be able to get to this. So anyway, yay, it's just so amazing. And this is where, like, there's never been a better time to do oral history work. I mean, I just don't think there's ever been a better time to be alive. Life sucked in 1870, by the way, if you didn't know that. So.
Well, what I would tell you is that my brain is probably pretty close to full, but despite that, I would like to share a tool this week as well. And I don't recall where I picked this up from. I think it was from one of the many email newsletters I read, but this actually has been pretty effective for me. This is a tool from Jordan Gibbs called Prompt Wizard. And it keeps changing names, which is a little unfortunate because I feel like that makes it harder to find for folks. But it's essentially a prompt tweaking tool, and so I think I might have mentioned, I did mention this episode that I do have a prompt that's close to 2 pages now that does things very specifically, and this helped me both make it more efficient and also get better outputs. And so a lot of people keep talking about how teaching or thinking about prompt engineering isn't a very useful exercise because at some point ChatGPT might be able to do that for you. And that may be true, but I still think it's really important for right now. And more importantly, I think it helps you understand these tools to be able to tweak prompts. And so there's a link, it's a custom prompt or a custom GPT on ChatGPT. I found that the output works across Claude and Gemini and all of the kind of standard issues there, and worth your time.
And what you're doing there is you're turning the tool on itself and you're asking it to code itself. And as I was doing some coding camps with students this year, it won't run Python script or JavaScript natively, but eventually it will be able probably to do that. And it's just because of a guardrail that it has. And that again, that can cause some goosebumps to rise on your arm when you realize that you are asking the tool to optimize itself and then give you that super powered prompt. And Ideogram calls it a magic prompt. And so whenever you put something into Ideogram for image visualization, it always creates what it considers to be a very elaborate and optimized prompt. And I'm using that literally every day now. So phenomenal, sir. We've gone over the top of the hour, but I think it's been worth it. Has everybody got their money's worth? Hey, it's free. Of course we did.
Yeah, hey, it's free. And we didn't even charge a sponsor this time around. So, Dr. Fryer, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, as long as I don't have malicious actors in foreign countries overwhelming my website and needing to block their IPs or my host, which has been happening, wesfryer.com, and you can go to lots of links for me there. How about you?
You can find me and also a bunch of junk text at aicentrist.com. But hey, this is the EdTech Situation. We're a once-a-week podcast on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight or whatever, the Eastern time zone in the United States. So sometime in the middle of the night, UTC. You can find us here certainly live every Wednesday night. We broadcast over YouTube and Facebook. But if you can't join us live, you can find us wherever finer podcasts are aggregated, or you can go to our website, edtechsr.com, and get a copy of all the links we talked about this week, or download a tiny MP3. We hope you have a wonderful week. Stay safe, stay savvy, stay human, and we'll see you the next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.
Adios, everybody.